Welcome to our new webinar. Hi, I'm Michał Górski, Chief Architect at Northmill Bank and AWS Community Builder. Today our meeting will be a little special because it will be in a panel form. At the end of the last year we were on the biggest AWS event, reInvent in Las Vegas, and today we want to share with you our thoughts about some of the most exciting topics covered on this event. Bogus, you as a principal engineer, could you point out some topics about the Graviton, because I heard that it's a huge topic last time.
Yeah, sure. So actually Graviton was introduced first in 2018, so it's not like a super new thing, but actually I think that it's gaining momentum right now. So actually, Graviton was used as a keyword during many different presentations, so I think that's important. In fact, the announcement regarding Graviton was that they are introducing the third generation, which is faster, cheaper, and so on, but I think that's not that important. The important fact is that right now you can use it with many different services. So, but maybe if you didn't hear about it earlier, Graviton is basically a family of processors that are manufactured directly by AWS. And they are ARM processors, so it's a different architecture than ordinary Intel x86. But their advantages are mostly the fact that they are cheaper, they are a bit more performant in various scenarios, and also they consume less power. So, yeah. At the moment, you can choose a Graviton instance not only in EC2, but you can also use it with other services like RDS, Lambda, Fargate, Cloud, Elasticsearch, and so on, many more. In fact, it's not only about performance, but also in some cases, using Graviton also gives you some additional features. And for example, on RDS, there is this cool option that you can enable called Performance Insights. So actually what it gives you is you can check what are the queries that run on your database that influence its performance the most. So you get this top 10 most resource-consuming queries. And for example, you can be sure that the first one would be something that you probably forgot to add an index or something like this. So you can easily spot it and fix it. And what's regarding Graviton, the thing is that this feature could be only enabled on the higher instances. So for example, the cheapest ones, the T tier, it was unavailable there. But with Graviton, this T4G medium instance, you can enable it. So that's really cool. So you can use it, for example, in your dev environment where you would probably have those lower instances.
Yeah, that will be useful.
Yeah. In fact, I have already enabled it on our dev environment, and it was super simple. It was just creating new instance with this Graviton type and enabling performance insights there. So yeah, it's already working. You can check it out. Yeah. Another service, Lambda. That's also you can also use Graviton there. And what's cool about it is that it's pretty simple to enable. I've checked it with one of our services. It's an ASP API service hosted with API gateway. And actually, the only thing that I had to change was the CloudFormation template and the architecture property there. I've changed it from basically default, nothing x86 into ARM. And that was it. I deployed the code and everything was working without any code changes, basically. So I couldn't tell that there is like any performance boost, but at least it's a bit cheaper.
You said many things about the advantages of Graviton, but are there any cons of that solution?
Yeah, basically I can think of two. So first of all, I've told that I didn't have to do any code changes, but actually that would be the case only probably in most cases. But if your code is dependent on some libraries that make use of like processor-specific optimizations, then probably it wouldn't be possible without changes. And the other concern I have is the availability of the physical number of those instances in AWS regions. So it might happen that you want to run your Lambda function and then you get error that the invocation is throttled because there are no resources available. So that would be my concern, basically.
Okay, we briefly touched upon the RDS, and I've heard, Daniel, that you attended quite a nice talk about it. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, sure. The title of the presentation that I was, it was Deep Dive into Amazon Aurora, and I got many of the insights how actually the Aurora is working underneath. For instance, when you are writing the data into your node, I know now that there is not only one single storage that is being kept. There are actually 6 of them, and when at least 4 of them are successfully saved, then the transaction is considered as successful. Moreover, I know now how the whole replication is working between write and read nodes. So you can get familiar with the AZ, how the data is being transferred between the AZs and how it is being available there, and many of the things. I really encourage everyone to see that presentation, and we'll share the link with you.
Yeah, okay. Then Daniel, maybe you know what happens if the AZ goes down. Do you know how AWS is handling that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and there was a bunch of information about that actually. What happens when the AZ goes down, but moreover, it's not only that. For instance, what possibly could happen when the whole region goes down. For example, there is some natural catastrophe. So then you can get familiar how the whole process is working to set up your new RDS in yet another region, and how to restore your data within a second. So yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
There was also another interesting announcement about the CDK version 2. Mateusz, you as our cloud architect, have you found anything interesting in that?
Yeah, in fact, CDK v2 is quite nice. Previously, when you were basically doing anything with CDK, every single service had a separate library. So with v2, that approach is completely scrapped. Right now, you have one big library, so you just include it, and well, you can organize your code in a way that it doesn't get included in your production libraries, right? So there's a benefit of not having to manage multiple libraries. That's one thing. And the second thing is that now any construct that is not stable, so it's considered an alpha, it is clearly marked. So at the end of the library that you're including, it just says it's minus alpha. So you know, as a person who includes your this code, that hey, it can change in a backward and compatible manner. So you just know. Another cool change is that right now docs for CDK, they just contain examples for every single construct. So it's a bit easier to start working with them. And all that is good. But actually there was one really interesting change, at least for me. I haven't used the V1, but I've noticed that CDK v2 has this feature of hot swaps. So you basically tell the CDK, hey CDK, please watch this project, and you make changes. Once you make changes and the changes are in files that you want CDK to watch, it will trigger updates on your infrastructure and your code independently. So I find it quite useful.
Yeah, Mateusz, it sounds really cool while developing your application, but what about the drifts in CloudFormation?
Yeah, that's one good thing to spot. Basically, this is only to be used in the development environment because, as you said, CDK Watch actually just tries to determine if it can do hot swaps or must it do full deployment. So, as you said, it will make the drift appear, but it's only for dev. Don't use it in production, basically.
Yeah, good advice.
And there are two more things actually from CDK. So first is support for Go, and it's only in preview. It's not general availability, but if you use Go, you basically can go for it. And if you create constructs that you want to share with people, you can basically do it now a bit more easily. There is Constructs Hub, so you can share it and people can use it. It may be useful. Maybe we can utilize it in the future.
Maybe changing the topic a little bit. I've heard that AWS setups local zones in Europe. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, that's true, but it's not only for Europe, and unfortunately it's not set up yet. It will be in this year. But yeah, AWS announced 30 new availability zones spread across the world. So not only the Europe, but also like the Philippines, Argentina or Kenya. But what is really important for us is that one will be in Poland. So going back, what is the local zone? Local zone is basically a small availability zone. So what it means that it contains only a limited amount of resources. So for example, you have EC2, you have EBS, EKS, ECS, but also the VPC and load balancers. Only in LA, in USA, there is also the Elastic Cache and RDS. So it's a little better. But what is special for the local zone is that it's always connected with a region. So in case of Polish future local zone, it will probably will be connected with Frankfurt, our nearest region. Then, being in this region, you can easily deploy your new applications in this Polish local zone. So what you need to do, first enable it, and it's a little funny because it needs to be enabled in EC2 settings. And then you can just create the subnet in this local zone and deploy your, I don't know, for example, EC2 instance in this local zone instead of any availability zone in this Frankfurt region. What needs to be known also is that prices for a local zone can be different than the parent region. So you can pay different price for a EC2 in Frankfurt than in Poland, basically.
Okay, and who will you recommend to change from the, for
Yeah,
example,
that's a-
Frankfurt region to local zone? What is the advantages of
Yeah,
that?
that's a really good question. It is for companies or for applications which needs to be as close to the customer as it's possible. So basically, if your application needs to respond in a very fast time, then you can place it nearer to your customers. Like if your main clients are from Poland, then you can deploy it in Poland or any other region or local zones.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it would be cool to see the comparison of times between, for example, if your client is in Warsaw and you have a local zone here versus Frankfurt or somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But what is also important that the availability zones and local zones are connected with any other regions, or in case of local zone, with a parent region with a private AWS network. So it shouldn't be very big different, but still in some industries it can matter.
Okay, guys, we're actually working mostly in .NET. What announcements did you hear that are worth mentioning?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we were hoping that we will hear that .NET 6 is supported by AWS Lambda, and we hope that there would be such announcement. Unfortunately, during the presentation, they said basically that the works are advanced, but they are not there yet. So unfortunately, we're still waiting. But the .NET 6 itself, it's okay. What's nice about it is that it's an LTS version. So what means that it has this extended support. And actually, here in Northmill, we have this policy that we're only using those LTS versions. So it means that right now we can switch from .NET Core 3.1, what is like really cool, because yeah, we were basically we couldn't use all those cool features that were introduced in .NET 5. So that's really nice. And regarding the .NET 6, the most interesting things about it is that, yeah, they said, getting back a little bit to the Graviton, they announced that there's gonna be a basically better support for ARM processors, so better performance and stuff like that. Other thing is connected with lambdas and cold starts. So basically, there is this IL trimming now available. So it's basically during compilation, you can tell that you want all the stuff that is not used in your code, you can just trim it out and reduce your binary size, what has direct impact on cold starts, because a smaller binary means that it's going to load faster. So that was already introduced in .NET 5, but it was extended a little bit in .NET 6.
That sounds really nice, but what if I use in my code the dependency injection? Will it be affected?
Okay, you mean that situation that we have in our projects, that basically we've got a single project that contains many Lambda functions, and you would have like a single DI container that you would use in all those functions, right? So in that case, unfortunately, the trimming wouldn't work, because yeah, the libraries would be referenced by the DI container. So what I would do here, I would skip using DI container and basically go with pure DI, so just referencing or creating all the dependencies by hand in every Lambda function. Then you can use the trimming.
Yep.
Yeah. Connected with cold starts, another feature, ready to run. So what is it? It's basically when you build your application, when you compile it, it gets compiled into this IL. So it's this platform agnostic, let's say, code. And when you run it on your target platform, it has to be transformed into the code that the machine can understand. So there is this, during lunchtime, there is this an additional step that has to be done. And it also influences cold starts. And with this ready to run, what you can do, you can tell the compiler that you want this binary to be prepared to be run, for example, on Linux. And then you can basically skip this just-in-time compilation.
Okay, but it sounds like we already used that before.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's present for some time in .NET. However, it wasn't that let's say easy to use it because if you wanted to target, for example, Linux, you had to build your application under Linux. So in our case, we are developing applications mostly on Windows, and the Lambda container is run on Linux, so that was a problem. So you had to either use some build server or build the code with use of Docker. So that was a little bit, just more difficult. Yeah. And right now there is this cross compilation feature. And actually, it's super easy. You just provide an additional switch to this .NET build command, and you can tell, I want this to be run, to compile for Linux, and that's it.
Sounds like a lot of basically improvements for free.
Yeah. So, that's gonna be really cool to use. Unfortunately, it's not there yet. We're still waiting for. Lambda support for .NET.6. Yeah, and besides that, there is also support for .NET, C# 9 and 10, basically. So all those cool features that our developers were wanted to try out. Those support for records, global imports, with statements, and many more.
Yeah, again, cool stuff. But up until now, we've mentioned RDS, we've mentioned some compute. And was there anything actually interesting in the NoSQL space that you, Daniel, would like to share?
Yeah, sure. I've been to the presentation about the DynamoDB deep dive into advanced structure patterns. But to be honest, during that presentation, maybe it wasn't so advanced, but it gave me the better picture of how the DynamoDB partition key, how the sort key, secondary global index are working, and how I should build them. Moreover, you can get familiar, probably all of you know, as we are using Dynamo and NoSQL globally, what's actually the difference between the SQL and NoSQL, maybe in more details than, So I really encourage everyone to see that presentation in case you are not so familiar, or there are some spaces where you are not feeling confident.
Okay, Daniel, I'm really curious how you are choosing the proper storage for your applications in your team.
It differs if we know what will be the access patterns or not. If we know that, then for sure we can use the DynamoDB if it's applicable. But if we don't know, then for sure we will use the RDS. And during the time, if we will see that there is a place where we should gain the performance, then the DynamoDB is a much better approach for that reason of performance.
Yeah, guys, you've mentioned architecture a little bit. Was there anything interesting regarding architecture on the reInvent?
Yeah, actually, there was one huge change in a well-architected framework. So basically, AWS added the new pillar, it's sustainability. So what is the well-architected framework? It's a knowledge base and questionnaires which should help you to design your applications, your workloads. So they added the sustainability pillar because there is a need in our world right now that we more think about the green energy, about not wasting the resources, etc. So they prepared the really huge knowledge base about it, and you can find there the information like what are the design patterns for sustainability, what are the proven concepts, etc. But also the questions which you should ask yourself while creating new application or for your actual working on production application. What is in very short, what is the sustainability on the cloud is that you can combine it as the same as a cost optimization. So basically, if you optimize the cost, then probably you are also better in sustainability. But it's not only the case. You can find in this knowledge base, for example, that you should, for sustainability, be as close as it's possible to the customer. And why? It's basically because if you are closer, then there is low energy needed to transfer your data, for example, or to show something to your customer, or use some edge devices, etc. What also AWS prepared for customers, it's the new shared responsibility model for sustainability. It basically has the same basics, like the same base. AWS is responsible for a cloud. So they will take care of the data centers, hardware, etc. So they will think about the power supply, about the waste, about the water, about the hardware, how to utilize it, etc. And they are trying to use as much green energy as they can. And they said that in 2025, I think, there will be like 80% of the energy used by the cloud will be from green energy. So it's, I think it's really cool. But still, another part of this model is on us. So we need to think about the efficiency of our code, about not having unused reserves for us, or the data really, which will really be not needed in the future. Yeah, so basically, it's a shared responsibility. In this pillar, you can find the knowledge base.
Okay, really interesting stuff. Yeah, we've mentioned storage topic earlier. Were there anything interesting regarding S3?
Oh yeah, actually S3 introduced new event destinations. So right up until now, you could have your S3 buckets or S3 service issue events to SNS, SQS, and you could have triggered Lambda. And right now there is Event Bus. I think there's a big push from AWS to use it everywhere. And for that matter, they've added support for S3 notifications. And yeah, it's useful. You get to basically use your notifications in all the services that Event Bus supports. There is one change though on SNS and SQS and Lambda. You received basically all of the S3 events as they were. So if you had multi-part upload, you knew that your object was created because of multi-part upload. And with Event Bus, they've added a mapping. So all of the creation events, you just learn, okay, it's an object created event. And it simplifies a bit. Yeah, nice change though. So remaining in the topic of events, I think there was some nice improvements on the SQS service, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, I heard about two new fancy features in queues on AWS. Basically, first is connected with the flutter queues. So if you are working with serverless, probably you are using the Flutter queues. So if the Lambda failed or any subscriber to the queue failed, then you want to transfer those messages to the Flutter queue and take care of it later. So in the past, I needed to check what happened and then redrive it by myself. So for example, write some script. It will transfer my message to the proper queue or to my Lambda or whatever should happen to this message. But right now, you can just simply open the AWS console, few clicks, and your messages are where you want, basically.
Nice.
So yeah,
Useful.
exactly. So it saves some time for us. And the second feature is even more fancy because it's connected with how you are dealing with messages while processing it as a batch in Lambda. So if you have Lambda processing 10 messages in the same time, then you can, if the one message failed, then your Lambda failed, and all 10 messages are back in the queue. Or you can make some magic with your code, like removing and adding the messages to the queue, but it's
work.
Exactly. It is hard for to think about it while developing the business logic, basically. But right now, you can simply return the response from your Lambda with IDs of the messages which failed. And then you don't need to change anything. And those messages which failed will be processed once again. But what is important here, that you shouldn't forget about the idempotency here. That my messages are processed properly, some improperly, and I can just assume that only those failed will be processed once again. But no, because still SQS is at least once delivery.
Two really cool improvements. It's not like but it's an improvement.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's what we developers want the most from AWS, to improve things, not like at big fancy new machines.
Or services, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, changing the topic from storage and queues, I heard that CloudFront received some big changes when it comes to its free tier. Have you heard anyone about that?
Yeah, actually, if you ask me, that's a big improvement because previously, when you were using CloudFront, you had like 2 million free HTTP and HTTPS requests per month, which in itself is quite a lot, depending on the size of your website or anything that you host. But right now, it was increased to 10 million of requests per month, 2 million of CloudFront function invocations, and there is 1 terabyte of free egress data transfer. So all in all, I think you can host your site for free. Again, depending on your scale, but it's a lot. Yeah.
That's really good for smaller businesses, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. August, we're using API Gateway quite a lot. Is there anything that Reinvent basically given us in terms of improvements?
Yeah, actually, there was this really small announcement, but I found it really useful. So there is this MTLS. If you're not familiar with it, it's it stands for Mutual TLS, and in standard HTTPS communication, there is this server certificate involved that basically allows you as a client to identify if the server is genuine. And with this MTLS, you as a client also provide your certificate to a server, so that the server can identify you as a client. And it's also used as a method of secure authentication. So in the past, MTLS was already supported by API Gateway. However, there was this one small issue with that in order for it to work, you had to use the server certificate that was issued by ACM. And the problem with that is that there are like three levels of certificates, depending on how strict the validation of the organization was. So, and ACM basically offers only the the least secure one. So in case you were forced to use, for example, extended validation for your certificate, then you basically couldn't use API gateway. And it was very annoying because there was like no direct information about that. You were trying to set this up, and then you were getting some various weird errors that were like not really telling you what's going on. So luckily, they've introduced basically the possibility that right now you can import your certificate from issued by some organization, external one, import it into ACM, and then use it with API gateway, and then you can enable this MTLS. So that's really cool. And actually, in the past, we were forced to use this extended the certificate of extended validation, and we were basically forced to implement this MTLS inside our application. So so right now we can simplify it.
Yeah, it just makes your life a bit easier.
Yeah, because you don't have to basically adjust your application when there is like this certificate is getting expired.
Yeah. Also, you offload more to AWS, and that's kind of the point of using it.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you would like to share?
Yeah, actually on the reInvent, AWS mentioned that they are opening a new portal for developers. Right now, anyone who was stuck was basically either reaching out to friends or going to Stack Overflow. So right now you can just use repost, which is basically Stack Overflow exclusive to AWS. You log in with your AWS account, so you're verified as to who you are. And it is set up quite similarly to Stack Overflow. So you have questions, answers. You can vote on questions. You can mark them as as approved. And everything is organized in topics. You can go to community groups, and I think it may be useful to peek in there and when you have spare time to help someone or you need help, basically.
Okay, sounds like a great idea, but have you checked if there is like any interesting content available there, or?
It's like with any internet-created content or community-created content. There are some amazing questions and amazing answers and some less, but it's overall, I would say, yet another source of possible solutions to your problems when you're stuck. So there is no downside to going there. I would say go for it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for this meeting. It was really good to talk with you about the reInvent stuff, cool stuff. And thank you for watching us. I hope there was a lot of valuable knowledge for you. And let's meet on another webinar. Basically, you can expect it soon. And if you want to work with these amazing gentlemen, just go to our website, which will be under this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.